What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk about the 40th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda. Now, if you are familiar with my channel, you'll know that we've talked about the 40th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda a few times. I did a video in February sort of giving some general predictions of what I thought could happen for Zelda this year and in the future relating to the 40th anniversary of the franchise. And then in, I think, April or May, I talked about how I thought the idea of an Ocarina of Time remake in line with the 40th anniversary of Zelda was a good idea, and how I was excited to see what Nintendo would do with a potential Ocarina of Time remake, because around that time, we got the rumor from Nate that they would be remaking Ocarina of Time for this holiday, and obviously now we know that to be true. It got announced in June. We didn't really see much of it, but we know it's coming out later this year. But the reason why I'm making this video is because recently we got some, I don't know if you want to call them leaks or just images of some Zelda 40th stuff that is pretty interesting. It makes me think that perhaps the Zelda 40th anniversary celebration from Nintendo could be pretty massive. So I want to revisit the idea of what Zelda's 40th could be, what we know is coming, what could be coming, and how they could deliver that information. That's what we're going to talk about today in relation to The Legend of Zelda. All right, my phone died right as I started recording. Not great timing, but that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Those three things, because I think it'll make for a pretty interesting discussion. And I don't know, there's a lot rumbling around my head about Zelda. Make sure to tell me in the comments what you expect for Zelda's 40th, like the video, all that stuff. But let's talk first about where we stand. What do we know concretely about Zelda's 40th anniversary, or maybe even more broadly about Zelda in 2026? I'm going to break this down into three categories, going from least to most interesting. The one I think is least interesting right now is software from Nintendo as it pertains to the Zelda franchise. Right now, we know that Ocarina of Time is getting a big remake, and it's coming out later this year. But we don't know anything about that. And in a way, that is really exciting, because the Ocarina of Time remake could be anything. Who knows what it could look like and play like, and what bonus content it could have. But it's also the least interesting because that's all we know about, and it is Ocarina of Time again, right? It's not a new Zelda game. I do think Nintendo will have more games as a part of Zelda's 40th anniversary that we don't know about, but obviously they haven't been announced, and they haven't even been in leaks, so there's not much to talk about concretely when it comes to games. The second category here is the movie, The Legend of Zelda movie, coming out in April of 2027. We're just about 8 months away from the Zelda movie coming out, and we barely know anything about it. We got those screenshots a while back of the two main characters portraying Link and Zelda, but other than that, we know basically nothing. But there have been some leaks slash rumors slash whatever you want to call them recently that have told us a good number of cast members for the Zelda movie. I'll read them out here for posterity's sake. Honestly, only one of them really caught my eye. You've got Daikon Lockman as Impa, which I do think is pretty good casting. She's not the biggest name, but she does kind of look like Impa. They both kind of have long noses. Is that okay? Can I say that? They both have long noses. Uli Ladukefu is Ganondorf. That's actually pretty cool. He apparently played Young Rock in Young Rock, if you remember that TV show. But that tracks for me. That seems like a good choice for Ganondorf. We heard Samara Weaving is playing Hylia, which is another interesting choice. I don't know if this one is as concrete as the first two. Obviously, all 6 of these people I'm going to read out have been rumored. You know, Nintendo hasn't come out and confirmed it, nor has Wes Ball, the director of the movie, but it seems like these actors are going to be in the movie in some way, and it seems like Samara Weaving is going to play Hylia. I don't know what story they're trying to tell here. because the picture we saw of Zelda was Breath of the Wild Zelda, but Hylia's in this. I don't know. We'll find out soon enough. Yvonne Strahovski is in the movie, but we don't know what character she's playing. There have been some rumors that she's playing some sort of queen character. So could be the fairy, I guess. I don't know. Lydia Peckham is on the cast, and she is also unknown in terms of what her character will be. There's no leads as to what she could be playing, and honestly, I'm not sure what she could be playing at all. So again, drop your thoughts down below. What is Lydia Peckham gonna play in the Zelda movie? I don't know. I thought this final one was pretty cool though. The late Sam Neill of Jurassic Park fame will be in the Zelda movie in some way. It'll be his final role in film, which is pretty cool that it's going to be in the Zelda movie and that we do get one more appearance from Sam Neill after he passed away. His role is also unknown, though obviously a lot of people have gone to the King of Hyrule immediately as a character that could make sense for him. And besides all of that, I didn't really care about the Zelda movie before this, but now I am kind of hoping it's good, you know, so that Sam Neill can go out on a high note. I don't really care about the Zelda movie, but it'd be nice if his final movie was a great one. So I do hope we get a good movie out of this. And I am encouraged by the cast, right? These are relatively unknown actors who seem to fit the characters well, just in terms of appearance, right? The actors who are playing Link and Zelda look like Link and Zelda. Uli Ladikefu seems like he would make a great Ganondorf. I said before, Dyken Lockman looks like Impa a little bit. They're both, you know, cool looking badass women. Like, it makes sense to me. Not to say that, you know, the actors have to look exactly like the characters, but they seem like good casting choices. And this doesn't seem like the Mario movie where we're just bringing in a bunch of A-list actors to play random voice roles for no apparent reason. Like, Chris Pratt's Mario. Okay, whatever, cool. I don't know. That doesn't seem to be the strategy with Zelda, which I do appreciate. Miyamoto is a producer on this movie, like he has been on the first two Mario movies, so I definitely thought that could be a concern with this movie, but seems like Wes Ball is doing a good job of selecting good people for the roles. We'll see if they pan out in April, but I don't know. I'm pretty excited. It could be cool. I don't know. Tell me in the comments if you're excited. But that is all the movie information we know. We'll talk later about what we could see from the movie this fall. I think we're going to see something. But again, we've yet to see anything officially besides those few screenshots that came about a year ago. And then finally, we have to talk about hardware. Technically, we know nothing about hardware concretely as it pertains to Zelda. But this is where that interesting leak comes in that I mentioned earlier. Honestly, I'm not sure who posted this initially. I saw it on Twitter from Nintendo and Necrofelipe, who both said it's real. They've seen it. So I tend to believe that this is real. And if you look at these pictures that I'm showing right now, which are of a Zelda-themed Pro Controller and a Zelda-themed limited edition Switch 2, it seems pretty real to me. There are a lot of small details here that certainly you could fake, but boy, this is one heck of a fake if this is not a real image of two promotional products for the Zelda 40th anniversary. And again, Nintendo and Necrofelipe have both said they've independently confirmed that these things are real and that the Zelda 40th logo is real, and you don't have to trust them. They're not the most reliable sources in the world. But when it comes to something like this, retail products, not games, I do think they are more reliable because it's a lot easier for that stuff to leak because there are, you know, longer and larger production lines and more people are informed of that stuff. And obviously it's harder to keep it under wraps. We saw that very clearly with the pre-Switch 2 reveal buzz where we had so much information leak about the Switch 2 before it was shown off in January, and certainly before we learned a lot of details about it in April. But if we're to believe these two things are real, which I am believing that, make your own decision for yourself. Ultimately, we're like a month away from knowing for real. So it doesn't really matter whether we think these leaks are real or not. But for fun, let's assume they are real. I do think they look really good. I love the emerald accents on the Joy-Con and the Pro Controller. I think anytime you get some emerald in a controller or a console or whatever, I think it just always looks great. The most exciting thing about this, though, to me, is that they are finally starting to make Joy-Con 2 controllers that don't look the damn same, besides the little accents inside of the joystick and inside of the console. Because the Zelda Joy-Cons that come with this limited Switch 2 have, emerald and patterns and all sorts of stuff on the outside, which has not been the case with previous limited time Joy-Con 2 controllers, where every Joy-Con released thus far in the Switch 2 generation has just been black with some slight color accents here and there. But this one is dramatically different. And I do hope they sell the Joy-Cons separately. I don't think they're going to be honest. But even if they're not available separately, I do think we're going to get some other unique Joy-Cons in the future. And that is exciting because it's about damn time. Only took us a year and a half to get some cool looking Joy-Cons, but regardless, that is what we know now. Those are the concrete things that we know heading into August and September when we could get the big Zelda 40th blowout. Just to reiterate, we know there will be a Pro Controller and a Switch 2 variant. We know Ocarina of Time is coming out this year. That's it in terms of what we know about Ocarina of Time, but we do know about it. In terms of the movie, we know a lot of the cast, even if Nintendo hasn't told us officially. So that isn't much, right? It's a few details. But the idea that Nintendo is releasing a Pro Controller and a Switch 2 for Zelda's 40th anniversary, which they did not do for Mario. They did nothing in terms of hardware for Mario. I mean, I guess they did a talking flower. They did do something that was on shelves, but in terms of Switch 2 accessories, they didn't do anything for Mario's 40th anniversary. And if you recall, Mario's 40th anniversary celebration in terms of quantity of announcements was pretty significant. We got Galaxy 1+2, we got Mario Tennis Fever, we got Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, and we got the Super Mario Bros. Wonder Switch 2 edition. Nothing groundbreaking, but 4 announcements for Mario. Technically 5 if you want to count Galaxy 1 and 2 separately. Whereas with Zelda, we only know of one game, the Ocarina of Time Remake. And I would be shocked if that isn't the biggest game associated with the 40th anniversary. I think the announcements around it will be smaller, but I still do think they are going to happen. I still do think there will be a few games for this year or early next year relating to Zelda's 40th. And again, having a marketing push with a Pro Controller and a Switch 2 makes me think maybe it could even be bigger. Maybe we could even see the next 3D Zelda or something, or we could get a big Zelda spin-off, because it does seem like they're putting a lot of weight behind Zelda's 40th anniversary. And yes, the centerpiece could be Ocarina of Time, but I think it just as easily could be something else, or there could be something that isn't as big as Ocarina of Time, but is still pretty significant. I think those hardware leaks do sort of suggest that, because it suggests that they're doing more with Zelda's 40th than even they did with Mario's 40th. But I think the next question has to be, where do we go from here? When will Nintendo make some announcements about Zelda? Well, I think there's 2 routes, and I think the first one is the one you're all thinking, a segment in the September Nintendo Direct, and I do think that is most likely. We are almost certainly going to get a September Direct right around TGS. Nintendo always does this, And it's a big holiday for the Switch too, especially outside of Japan, where the price is raising. They need to convince people to go out and buy a more expensive console this holiday season. So a September Direct is almost certainly happening. But the question is, will it contain a significant segment for Zelda's 40th anniversary like last September's Direct had for Mario's 40th? And I think that is probably what they're going to do. The September Directs always get a lot of eyes being around Tokyo Game Show. But I do think there is a possibility that they could do it sooner. And that is because perhaps they want to take the same route they did with Kirby Air Riders with Ocarina of Time. As a refresher, what they did with Kirby Air Riders was they had a Direct for Kirby Air Riders the same day as Gamescom opening night live. And then they had Kirby Air Riders playable on the Gamescom show floor, and then a few weeks later at PAX West. All right, so mere hours after I recorded this video, the presenters, booth havers, whatever you want to call it, at PAX came out, and Nintendo is not on the list. So sort of negates the point I'm about to make, but Nintendo is still at Gamescom. So they could still want to bring the Ocarina of Time remake to Gamescom, but it doesn't seem like they're going to want to do it to PAX West. I'm really surprised by that because they've always been at PAX. I don't know why they're not going this year. So keep that in mind as we talk about this next part of the video. Good morning, Unbeatable. Isn't that a cool shirt? And that started the marketing blitz for Kirby Air Riders that took it all the way to its late November release date. Well, we all kind of think Ocarina of Time is coming out in November, and if that's the case, it might make sense to do the same sort of marketing push with Ocarina of Time that they did with their big November game last year. If that's the case, they would need an Ocarina of Time Direct before the 25th of August, which is this year's Gamescom opening night live, so that they could have Ocarina of Time on the show floor at Gamescom and PAX West, just like they did with Kirby Air Riders a year ago. And if you're gonna have an Ocarina of Time Direct, you might as well take all of the other 40th anniversary Zelda stuff, throw it into a presentation, and have a Zelda 40th anniversary Direct, sort of like they did with Mario's 35th anniversary in 2020. Now, I don't think that would come in place of a general Direct. The Kirby Air Riders Direct in August of last year did not come in place of a general in September that same year. I don't think it would be the case here. I think it would be separate so that they could have Ocarina of Time playable at Gamescom and playable at PAX West. I don't think this is likely to happen, but I don't think it's impossible, especially when you think about what Nintendo is bringing to Gamescom right now. They are bringing 9 games, but only 3 of them are first-party games: Switch Sports Resort, Splatoon Raiders, and the Pocopia Expansion Pass. So DLC, a game that's already out and has been demoed at places like Comic-Con, and then Switch Sports Resort, which is perhaps their biggest game of the holiday season. But there's not much for Nintendo at Gamescom. They are bringing third-party games like Orbitals and COD. Those are big deals, but it does kind of feel underwhelming for a Nintendo booth, and I'm not saying that's indicative of them having something else that they're going to show off, but they did do that last year, where they didn't announce that Kirby Air Riders was going to be on the show floor until the Kirby Air Riders Direct, which happened right before the Gamescom Play Days that they have. And this year, those Play Days are August 26th to August 30th. So they would have to do it by August 25th. They would need an Ocarina of Time or Zelda Direct by that date, so that they could then show it off to everyone on the show floor of Gamescom and PAX West later. PAX West is about a week or two after that. There is one more point that I want to bring up in terms of the possibility of a Zelda Direct happening before the general Direct in September rather than them being fused together. The Mario segment of the September Direct last year happened right at the beginning, and then all of the other stuff came after it. It felt like its own thing. It felt so separate from the rest of the Direct to the point where I don't think it's wild to say that maybe at one point the plan was to have the Mario Direct premiere separately a few weeks before the September Direct, but they needed something big at the beginning. They always like to do that, something big at the beginning and the end. They had Fire Emblem at the end, but they didn't have anything to start off the Direct with. Maybe Splatoon Raiders was supposed to be there, but got pushed back a little bit. I don't know. And so they took that Mario Direct, pulled it back a few weeks, and stuck it to the General. Obviously, there's no reason to believe this, but I do think it's a possible reason for why the Mario Direct was, well, it wasn't Mario Direct. The Mario segment of the September Direct was there and not somewhere else on its own a few weeks earlier. I mean, if you want to get really galaxy brained, they did that My Mario stuff in August out of nowhere, which was definitely something they could have wrapped in to the 40th anniversary celebration, but they didn't. So like, maybe that even lends more credence to the fact that that was supposed to be the kickoff, but they had to push everything else back. But the My Mario thing was its own app and they just had to go with it. I don't know. But I do think Zelda is in a little bit different of a situation for two reasons. The first one is that I think a Zelda segment in a Direct could be even longer than the Mario one, which last year the Mario segment of the September Direct was 20 minutes. Think about what we need to cover in terms of Zelda 40th stuff. We need to show off that Pro Controller and that Switch 2. We need to do a gameplay deep dive for Ocarina of Time, which even if we don't get a huge trailer in September, maybe that comes in October or November, they still have to show off the game. They're still going to show off a few good minutes of footage, you would assume. You would think they're going to give some news on the movie, whether it's a teaser or some sort of cast announcement. You would think they're going to have some movie news. And then, like I said earlier, I think there will be a good number of Zelda announcements, whether for this year or next, whether it is, you know, a Zelda challenge on NSO like they did with DK, or a Zelda 40 like they did with Mario 35 or F-Zero 99, or some bigger games like ports of older games like Wind Waker or Twilight Princess, or a new spin-off, a new Four Swords type game. Maybe I'm overestimating the amount of content they have here for a Zelda 40th anniversary segment, but if it does get long, I think there's a certain point where you have to cut it off and you have to just make it its own thing, right? Like, they don't want to have a 2-hour Nintendo Direct. Like, no one's gonna like that. Even if the September one was over an hour long, I think even Nintendo would have their limits at a certain point. I mean, the June Direct didn't even break an hour, so I don't think they want to have these super long Directs be the standard, and there's a chance that this Zelda Direct could push it to an hour 10 or an hour 15, and maybe at that point you do just cut it off and make it its own thing. The second point is pure speculation, but I do think a September Direct this year could have a lot more firepower than the September Direct had last year, not counting Zelda for this year or Mario for last year. I liked the September Direct a good bit last year, but a lot of it was carried by the litany of Mario announcements. Outside of Mario, we got Fire Emblem coming in 2026. We got Pocopia coming in 2026. We got dates for Prime 4 and Hyrule Warriors, and we got DLC for DK Bonanza, on top of a bunch of cool third-party stuff. That's not terrible. They had worse Directs than that in the Switch 1 era. I'm thinking of you, September 2019. But it's not great. So obviously you throw the Mario stuff on top of that, and you've got a pretty solid Direct. But when I think about what we could see at a September Direct this year, I feel like there could be a lot of cool stuff. To defend my point here, I do need to delve into leaks a little bit, so if you don't want to hear those, I totally get that. Click off now. But you think about what we could see at a September Direct, and I don't know, I feel like it could be a pretty good showcase. I mentioned earlier that Nintendo has to prove to people again why they should buy a Switch 2 after the price increase. And we saw after the price increase in Japan, we got that June Direct that was very JRPG focused. I think you could see a similar thing here, but on a bigger scale, where A lot of regions had a price increase, so maybe they want to bring out the big guns and convince people to buy Switch 2s. 3D Mario is one that is rumored for next year. There was a pretty damn credible leak that Metroid Ravenous, presumably the next 2D Metroid game, is imminent, coming out sometime, probably next year. There are rumors of a Super Metroid remake. There are rumors of another Star Fox game. There aren't really rumors about this, but I think it's about time for some Mario Kart World DLC. I think it's about time for a new Kirby game. I don't think it's impossible that we get an update on Xenoblade Genesis. And obviously we've been thinking for a while that Luigi's Mansion 4 and Mario Maker 3 are going to come at some point. Those games have to release eventually, right? So you start to add up like what we could see at a September Direct, and I feel like it could be a pretty strong showcase even without Zelda, which wouldn't necessitate a big Zelda chunk in the September Direct. Sure, they could still put it in there and just have an incredible September Direct, but again, if they have enough Zelda stuff and they want to have Ocarina of Time playable at Gamescom, I think it makes a lot of sense to have a Zelda-specific Direct in the middle of August. Again, do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. I think the most likely scenario is that we get a Zelda segment in a September Direct, and that'll be just fine and dandy. But I don't think it's impossible that they take a different route. I do think we're going to get something else in August. Maybe it's a Duskbloods trailer. Maybe it's a Pikmin 4 Switch 2 edition. I don't think they're done giving us August information, but maybe it will be the big bomb of a Zelda Direct. So those are my thoughts on when we could learn more about Zelda. But the question is, what could they show off? I'm going to try to speed run this because I have talked about this before and I've alluded to it a lot in this video. But here are some rapid thoughts. Oh, I just hit my camera. Here are some rapid fire thoughts of things I think could show up for Zelda's 40th anniversary. Obviously, in terms of the movie, I think we could get a teaser. Perhaps they could announce a specific movie direct for a few weeks after the presentation or whatever direct this Zelda segment shows up in. In terms of the hardware, obviously we will see that Pro Controller and that Switch 2. Will the Joy-Cons be available separately? That's the big question. And also, could there be some Ocarina of Time amiibo? I don't think that's out of the question at all. In terms of software, obviously we will get a big Ocarina of Time trailer with a release date, probably in November. Don't forget about the Switch 1. They're not celebrating Zelda's 40th at all right now, and I don't think Nintendo is gonna forget them. I think the Switch 1 is gonna get 1 or 2 ports of old Zelda games, or maybe a small spin-off. I think Wind Waker or Twilight Princess HD, I know we talk about that a lot in these circles, but I do still think they're possible because GameCube NSO is not on Switch 1. So if Nintendo wants to give Switch 1 users a way to play Wind Waker or Twilight Princess, they can't do it through GameCube because you can't play that on Switch 1. If they want to do something a little bigger for Switch 1, obviously the Oracle games are dying for some sort of re-release. I would love to see Grezzo do a remake of those games, maybe even combine them into one game with all their content together. I think that is such an easy win for Nintendo, but maybe not the time. And finally, in terms of Switch 1 stuff, Link Between Worlds HD. How has this not happened yet? We need that on Switch. I think it's going to come eventually. What better time than the present? In terms of Switch 2 stuff, I really do think it's time for a Zelda spin-off. The one I keep pegging is something for Swords. I feel like that would make so much sense for the Switch 2 with how Nintendo has prioritized collaboration and couch co-op. The idea of a Four Swords game that uses game chat and game share, it just feels like such an obvious move for Nintendo and would be the perfect spin-off to have alongside the hardcore Ocarina of Time remake. And then finally, could we get something bigger than Ocarina of Time? I know that's crazy to say. Could we see the next 3D Zelda? Again, I do think the 40th anniversary of Zelda is going to be a really big deal. And if that's the case, I don't think anything's off the table. yes, it's probably too soon for a new 3D Zelda game. But I would say never. And also, again, I keep harping on the fact that this presentation is likely going to happen after the price increases in North America and other regions. What a great way to get people to forget about that than announcing a new 3D Zelda game, right? Just having that linger in people's minds. You wouldn't hear a lot about the price at that point. If not a new 3D Zelda game, what about some Tears of the Kingdom DLC? I know Aonuma said they wouldn't do that, but we've seen other Nintendo developers and other Nintendo teams say their games are done only to get more DLC and updates on the Switch too. Splatoon 3, I think, is the obvious example there. So let's say in the exact opposite direction I just went, 3D Zelda is way off, like years off. It might make sense to have a smaller team revisit Tears of the Kingdom and do a story expansion out in 2027 to tide people over. It would be an odd move, but I don't think it would be impossible, and I certainly would love to see them revisit Tears of the Kingdom with some weird expansion. I think that would be really cool, and I think it would be sort of a smart move if 3D Zelda is, let's say, 2030. Let's say it's all the way years off. You could have Ocarina of Time 2026, Tears of the Kingdom expansion 2027, and then like Majora's Mask remake in 2029 to lead up to the big new 3D Zelda game. But those are my thoughts on Zelda's 40th anniversary, of the things we could potentially see at this big Zelda 40th blowout that I really do think is happening, and I do think is going to be massive. But tell me in the comments, do you think this Zelda 40th anniversary is going to be a big deal, or do you think Nintendo's just gonna sell some merch and not do much else with it outside of the Ocarina of Time remake? And regardless, tell me some predictions of things you think will happen with the Zelda franchise, games, movies, whatever else in the coming years, because I think we're going to hear a lot about Zelda in the next few weeks. And I think we could get announcements that stretch even to 2028. I think we could really get some big stuff for Zelda. So tell me in the comments, what do you think about all that? And if you are excited, make sure to like the video, subscribe, hit that big fat button. I'm sort of getting the flow back here on YouTube. I did a Splatoon Raiders video a few days ago that I thought was pretty fun. I thought I had a pretty good thesis in that video, so go check that out if you haven't. And we'll be doing more stuff here on the channel. There is more to come on the What's On channel, and if you don't want to miss any of it, you gotta hit that freaking bell. You gotta do it. Share the video with a friend who is excited about Zelda's 40th. And with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.